look at the formatting, and we're going to look at how to modify these pages and add more information. So here's Halictus parallelis. If you go to the top here, you can see in the URL a basic format. So Halictus plus parallelis in that previous information. You can get to that a variety of ways. I simply usually just use a Google search for whatever the species is, and I can come to that, open up that URL, and then I can modify the species and genus up here if I want to just look at pages more efficiently. I can also go through DiscoverLife right through the homepage by typing in the name. So at the top, we have taxonomic information. We have the current name, and we're using Asher and Pickering as our basis for taxonomic truthhood. And then we have the author and year. Below that are synonyms. In this case, there's only one, Halictus occidentalis by Cresson, 1872. And in many cases, there might be many synonyms in there. But for now, for this species, just one. Those are set. We don't modify those. Below that is information on the genus and the subgenus, as well as the higher taxonomic string for the group. The next set is, this map is always in the same place in every single species page in the upper right-hand corner, mapping whatever data are accessible to DiscoverLife. And then to the left and below are pictures that are added by the users. So these are things that we explained in another video that we can manipulate in terms of what goes to the top and what goes to the bottom. So here's a whole series. You can see the code here, 8, 7, 6, going down and down, showing the smaller the number, the lower in the hierarchy of pictures, the pictures are presented. And generally, the better pictures are at the top. Okay, at some point, we have a cutoff by DiscoverLife in terms of the number of pictures that are going to be seen in the page, and he has a link to thumbnails. We can circle back and talk to Pick about changing these formats, but we won't talk about that here. There's a slideshow that allows you to go through them too. And this next sections are largely things that we control. So it starts out with identification. Currently, I should say, it starts out with identification. We can change this. And so there's a little section here about how it has dark wings compared to other eastern species. We can add as much information as we want here. The next section is literature. So these are extracts of the taxonomic descriptions from a variety of publications, mostly technical. So here, Mitchell, Bees of Eastern United States, and it goes through the female and male and that sort of information. There's a section below that for revisions. So this is where we haven't, could link to PDFs of revisions and the associated keys in those revisions for the species group in which Halictus parallelis belongs. I don't know any of those revisions off the top of my head, so I've not included any of those. We have the next session will be online keys. So this is hot linked in this particular case to the Halictus guide section of the Bees of Florida. If we find additional online keys and guides for bees that include Halictus parallelis, we would add them in here. The next sections are all hot wired in by DiscoverLife. So this name section, supported by section. These are links between collections of this species on a variety of different plant species. This is something that essentially we control, so we can add more of these kinds of collection links, but we have to have the data and it has to be uploaded to DiscoverLife for that to show up here. But that's something that is highly useful, and I think more people would like to see more of that. Below this level here, these are also in our control. So we're not hosting pictures, we're serving pictures. The difference being that these pictures do not exist on DiscoverLife, we're simply linking to them. And in this particular example, we have two pictures of Halictus parallelis from other sources, one from Tom Murray's site and one from bugguide.net. So we can add as many, as few, or none if we want. So that's the basic page layout. Now, if we go and we want to modify that layout, what we're going to go to is, what we're going to do is we're going to go to a guide that, in this case, it's the Halictus guide that has the species. So we've gone to the Halictus guide. I've already, so if we restart the guide, it's going to look like this. In other sections, other videos, we've talked about how to modify the URL at the top with an email, an and email equals, and an and pin number, which you get from the email to make and allow you to make changes to the guide. And you would see after clicking on that, oops, I just erased it. Clicking on this, hitting enter and activating the URL, and then clicking on menu, if you see this expanded section of options in this panel over here, you know that your information up here has worked. So now we can make changes. We have permissions. The pin number email combo has allowed us to make changes. And so now if we want to edit the text of a species page, right now we're only talking about species pages. We can go and we can click on the radio box in front of the species we want to edit, Halictus parallelis in this case, and we can also click on here on edit underscore text because we're going to edit the text on it, and then hit submit, and we get two things. We get a female and a male because there are males and females in this guide. It doesn't really matter which of these we choose. I'm going to choose the male here, so the little arrow, down pointing arrow, chevron is indicates what to click. And now we get to this form. So up here at the top, we can't touch this. This is actually modifiable, but in a we would use the score feature for that. So this is essentially set. And then below that are preordained sections that we can use. So I think at the moment, we are only going to be using this section called identification. Now, it does show that you can modify this, but the reality is no matter what you modify that as, if you wanted different headings, for example, it goes back to being identification. So we're capitalizing on that. And then subsequently, we're going to be adding in all the other subheadings and sections manually within the identification thing. So again, emphasizing that DiscoverLife, the portion of DiscoverLife where you make changes, you're really submitting code. So what you're seeing below is super simple HTML code for working on paragraphs and things. Nothing fancy, possible, I suppose, to put in fancier things, but why bother? So for example, here we start out with that identification information, darker, we wrote that. We put in a paragraph mark so that there's a line space. The next one is a section head called literature. We're bolding it. This is the start bold, and the /B indicates the end of the bolding area. And then we're going to do another P so we get a blank line. And then we're dumping stuff in here. So when we go to the literature, we always start out with where was the literature extracted from. So we're using a, kind of standard bibliographic format, Mitchell, comma T, 62, Bees of Eastern United States, so on and so forth for a complete bibliographic reference. Another P marker to indicate that we want a blank line, and then we copy in whatever we want from Mitchell in this case. So information about female, there's, if we want a paragraph break, we put in the little P, it doesn't matter whether it's capital or not. Then we go on in here to male. And if I wanted to, in any of these particular cases, if I see a misspelling and I want to correct it, I can do that right now. So I'm not going to bother because this is good enough. I don't see any obvious errors. So we would continue doing that, distribution, floral records. These are all things that we are able to do. Really, there's not a whole lot more to it. So here's revisions with surrounded by paragraph marks with with the bold HTML, the online keys. So the online key section is worth a second here because we have a linkable set of words. In other words, if I click on Bees of Florida, in this case, I'm going to go to a URL. And that has a very specific, very findable on the internet way of writing that out. So here it starts as okay, and there's a space, and then it's on the next line because this is so long. There's a space href equals, and then between what are those things called? Quotation marks is the URL, completely written out, HTTPS in this case, colon // full URL to the location of wherever it is you want to go. In this case, the Halictus area of the Florida Bees website. You can see here it says Halictus. And then there's a closed bracket, and then following that is the wording, in this case, the Bees of Florida guide, that we want to have highlighted and linked to that website. And then to shut it all down, we have the code that says /a in brackets that says that's the end of that reference. So that would be it. I'm going to make one small change here so it has something to do, and I'm going to hit save. Any of those save buttons will do the same thing. If you see up here, it says thanks, save changes on server. If you see something else, particularly if it says error or whatever, you should probably stop, take a picture of the screen, get back to me or Claire, and we'll see what we can do. Better, unless for whatever reason you really do know what the problem was, rather than compound the problems by pressing some buttons and not knowing what to do. And so it just tells you to refresh the tool to activate. So again, you've submitted code. So here's some of this section. You're editing this page, and it's this is the person/email account that it's done on, and so forth. And so now, in order to see that change, all we have to do is hit the refresh button. This is a little confusing because it's the refresh over here, not a refresh that you might see up at the top of a page or by clicking and seeing the refresh button show up. It's literally this thing right here that says refresh. You click on it, and what should happen if everything's good is you get something like this with no errors up here, nothing saying, hey, you did something wrong. And then you'll see what we would call the checklist, which is all the species in this particular kind of format laid out. And you're done. So it's a lot of words. It's not that difficult. If there's any questions, you can get in touch with Claire or myself. Thank you very much. I'm done, Claire.